All right, everyone, buckle up because we've got a fresh WordPress beta to dig into today. 6.7 just dropped beta 1, and we are diving straight in.
Oh yeah, this is exciting stuff.
It is exciting. And, this is the first look we're getting at what might be coming down the line with WordPress in the future. And, before we get too far, I just want to say big thank you to WordPress.org as always. That's where we got all the info for this deep dive.
Always a great resource.
It really is. So
Oh.
6.7 beta 1, this is not something, and we say this every time, but this is not something to go install on your live site just yet.
Right, this is a playground, not the main stage.
Exactly. This is where you want to go if you want to tinker, if you want to play around with the new features and start to get excited about what's coming. But if you've got client work on a site, don't go installing it there.
Yet. But honestly, this is one of the most exciting times to be a WordPress user because you can actually get involved in shaping the future of the platform.
That's so true. That's the cool thing about it being open source, right?
Absolutely. And the announcement really emphasizes how much the WordPress team values community feedback during this beta phase.
So spill the beans. How can our listeners actually get involved? Because I know some people might be listening thinking, well, I'm not a developer. I don't know the first thing about testing beta software.
You don't have to be a coding wizard to make a difference.
That's right.
The announcement actually lays out a bunch of different ways you can test this beta, depending on your comfort level. If you're a plugin person, grab the WordPress Beta Tester plugin. It makes things super easy.
For me, that's how I like to test things.
It's nice and straightforward. But if you want to go a little deeper, you can download the beta directly and install it on a test site.
Yeah, get your hands dirty.
Exactly. And of course, for our command line gurus out there, good old WP CLI is always a reliable option.
It's a classic for a reason.
Right. But let's be real. Not everyone wants to mess around with installing stuff, even on a test site.
Totally.
And that's where WordPress Playground comes in. You can actually tinker with the beta right in your browser. No downloads, no installations, just pure WordPress fun.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the beta process, but now let's get to the good stuff. New features.
The fun part.
The fun part, right. Every WordPress release comes with a brand new default theme, and this year is no exception. Get ready for 2025.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear more about this one.
And I am excited to tell you about it because this is all about flexibility. It's all about making your website truly yours without having to be, a code wizard.
So true. The announcement actually calls it the epitome of ultimate flexibility and adaptability. And it all comes down to this concept of patterns.
Okay, patterns. That's the new buzzword. So for anyone who's not familiar with patterns, how would you explain it?
Think of it like building with blocks, but on a bigger scale. Instead of just individual elements, you've got these pre-designed sections for different parts of your website.
So like your header, your footer.
Exactly. Your header, your footer, your homepage sections, even your blog posts, you can find patterns for all of them.
Nice.
And the cool thing is, you can just drag and drop these patterns, rearrange them, customize them to your liking, all without touching a single line of code.
Yeah, that's a game changer for a lot of people because I know code can be intimidating. Even for someone like me who's been in the WordPress world for a while, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't want to look at code today.
Totally.
Uh-huh.
And that's the beauty of patterns. It's about putting the power of design directly into the hands of users, regardless of their technical skills.
That's what I like to hear. Democratizing design. Anyone can do it.
Exactly. And it opens up so many possibilities for creativity and making your website truly unique.
And speaking of making things easier and more intuitive, there's another new feature tied to patterns that I'm really excited about, and that is Zoom Out View.
Oh, yes. Zoom Out View. This is a game changer. It's like having a bird's eye view of your entire website layout.
It's like having a blueprint, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Instead of getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty of individual elements, you can see all your patterns laid out and move entire sections around with drag and drop.
So much easier.
It makes experimenting with different layouts so much more intuitive and fun.
I feel like this is what we all really want. We all just want to make our websites look good and be functional without having to, pull our hair out.
You just want to make it look pretty, right?
Exactly.
And Zoom Out View definitely helps with that.
It's like you can finally step back and see the big picture of your website, how everything fits together.
Exactly. And then make those big picture changes without having to wrestle with a million tiny details.
So it's all about efficiency. It's about making life easier for WordPress users.
Exactly. And it's about making the design process more enjoyable.
Because nobody wants to spend hours and hours just trying to get their website to look the way they want it to look.
Right. It should be fun. It should be creative. And with these new features, it really can be.
Yeah, and it's not just about, making things look pretty, although I think 2025 is going to be a real looker.
Oh, for sure. It's
But
beautiful.
it's also about making sure our websites work well, right? And I'm not just talking about loading quickly, although that is important.
Crucial, especially these days.
Absolutely. But there are all those little details, those under-the-hood improvements that can make a big difference in the long run.
Totally. And this beta has some really nice refinements in that department.
So, like what? Give me an example.
Well, for one thing, WordPress 6.7 is adding support for HEIC images.
HEIC. Okay, now I'll admit I had to Google this one. For anyone who doesn't know, HEIC, it's an image format, right?
That's right. It's becoming more and more popular, especially on Apple devices.
Yeah, that's where I've encountered it.
It's known for having really great quality, but in a smaller file size compared to like your traditional JPEGs.
And smaller file sizes, that's what we like to hear, right?
Oh, absolutely. Smaller file sizes mean faster loading times, and that makes everyone happy. Visitors are happy because they don't have to wait, and website owners are happy because Google likes a speedy site.
Speed is everything these days.
It really is. We live in a world of instant gratification.
Nobody wants to wait around for a slow website.
Exactly. So even though it seems like a small change, adding support for HEIC images is actually a pretty big deal.
It can have a real impact on user experience. And speaking of little changes that make a big impact, automatic image resizing. Did you see that in the announcement?
Oh yeah, that one caught my eye too.
Yeah.
That's a huge win for efficiency.
So for anyone who's not a web developer, explain why we should care about image resizing.
So whenever you upload an image to WordPress, it usually creates multiple sizes of that image, right?
What, like a thumbnail version, maybe a medium-sized version for the blog post?
Exactly. And it needs those different sizes to display the image properly on different devices, like a phone versus a desktop computer.
It's all about responsiveness.
Exactly. But sometimes those different image sizes could end up taking up more storage space than they really needed to.
Bloating that website.
Exactly. So what automatic image resizing does is makes WordPress smarter about how it manages those different sizes.
Yeah. So it's not just randomly creating a zillion versions of the same image.
Exactly. It's optimizing everything behind the scenes to make sure the images look great and load quickly on any device.
Okay, so we've talked about some cool features for everyday users, but I know we've got some developers listening in who are eager to hear about the good stuff for them in Beta 1. And let me tell you, there is some good stuff.
Oh, there's always something for developers in these updates.
Always. So for our code-savvy listeners out there, we're talking expanded block supports, the Preview Options API, and some cool updates to template registration.
They're going to love it. It's all about giving developers more power and flexibility to build even more dynamic and customized websites.
More tools for the toolbox. But give us some concrete examples. What can developers actually do with these new features?
Okay, so let's start with expanded block supports. Essentially, this means developers have more control over the functionality and appearance of blocks.
So blocks, those are the building blocks of the WordPress editor, right?
Exactly. They're those individual elements that you use to build out your content, like text blocks, image blocks, buttons, all that good stuff.
Love them.
With these expanded supports, developers can create even richer, more dynamic blocks, which ultimately gives users more creative control over their content.
It's all about pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the block editor, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then there's the Preview Options API. This one's super cool because it lets developers give users a live preview of what their content will look like on the front end of their site, even before they hit publish.
Oh, game changer. I know how frustrating it can be to make a change in the editor and then have to, refresh the page a million times to see what it actually looks like.
Right. This eliminates that back and forth. It makes the whole editing experience much smoother and more intuitive.
I love that.
And of course, we can't forget about the template registration updates. This one might seem a bit more niche, but it's a big deal for developers who work with custom templates.
So less time wrestling with code, more time building awesome websites.
Exactly. It's all about streamlining the workflow and making developers' lives a little bit easier.
Which means they can focus on the creative stuff.
Precisely.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of new features, but remember data views. They were first introduced in WordPress 6.5, and it seems like they're getting some more love in 6.7.
They are, and for good reason.
I'm still trying to fully wrap my head around data views, to be honest. How would you explain them to someone who's completely new to the concept?
Sure. Data views are basically a way to display dynamic content on your website.
Dynamic content meaning what exactly?
Meaning content that updates automatically based on certain criteria. So instead of having to manually update your site every time something changes, you can use data views to pull information from different sources and display it dynamically.
Give me an example. What kind of sources are we talking about?
Well, it could be your blog posts, your pages, your comments, even custom fields you've created.
Okay, I'm starting to see the possibilities here. So instead of having like a static list of my recent blog posts, I could use a data view to automatically display the 3 most recent posts, and it would update every time I publish something new.
You got it. Or you could create a portfolio grid that automatically pulls in your latest projects. Or an event calendar that displays upcoming events from your Google Calendar. The possibilities are pretty much endless.
So it's like having a personal assistant for your website content.
Right. They just take care of all that tedious updating for you.
Exactly. That's awesome. And it sounds like WordPress 6.7 is making data views even more powerful and user-friendly.
Yeah, they're really focusing on refining the interface and making them more intuitive to use.
Which is great because sometimes those more advanced features can be a little intimidating, even for someone like me who's been using WordPress for a while.
Totally. They can be a bit daunting at first glance.
So making them more approachable, I think that's a good move.
Definitely. The more accessible we can make these powerful tools, the better.
Absolutely. Now, before we get too carried away, we should probably remind everyone that this is still a beta version.
Right, beta 1, we're still early in the game.
Exactly. So things could definitely change between now and the official release.
Absolutely, that's the nature of beta testing.
Things might get tweaked, features might get added or removed, who knows?
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. It's all about making sure everything is polished and ready for prime time. But speaking of making things better, did you notice the part in the announcement about the doubled vulnerability bounty?
Oh yeah, that caught my eye.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign.
For anyone who might not be familiar with the bounty program, can you explain why it's such a big deal?
Sure. So basically, WordPress has a program where they offer rewards to security researchers who discover vulnerabilities in the software.
It's like, hey, find the weak spots before the bad guys do.
Exactly. And during the beta and release candidate phases, they double those rewards.
So even more incentive to help make WordPress as secure as possible.
Precisely. It's a really smart strategy, and it shows how seriously they take security.
Which is something I think we all appreciate, especially in this day and age. Well, I feel like we've covered a ton of ground today. Everything from shiny new themes to under-the-hood developer goodies.
We've been through it all.
We really have, from patterns to performance improvements, and of course those all-important security enhancements.
And let's not forget data views.
Oh yeah, data views are going to be huge. But as always, we want to hear from you, our listeners. Head over to the website, check out the show notes. We'll have links to everything we talked about today. And let us know what you're most excited about.
Yeah.
Are you Team 2025? Are you hyped about Zoom Out View?
Or maybe you're a data views devotee.
Let us know. Hit us up on social media. Send us an email. We love hearing from you. But most importantly, get out there and try out the beta. Just remember, on a test site, don't let us be responsible for messing up your live website.
Safety first.
Always. All right, that's it for this deep dive into WordPress 6.7 Beta 1. Until next time, happy WordPressing, everyone.